Finally, I was going back home to my home island of Puerto Rico, and spend some time with my family. This semester was pretty tough on me, but a good vacation was what I needed. However, this time I wanted to take a road trip to the town of my birth, Salinas. I was born in a hospital in a little community called Aguirre, but I had never personally seen it, not that I can remember anyway. From what I read, the hospital was abandoned, but still standing. My mom didn't want me to go, but she didn't tell me why. I didn't care though. You know how moms are. They worry about every little thing. The ride took around an hour. Aguirre was pretty well hidden in the back roads of the town. But eventually, I was able to find it perched on a small hill. Why did I go in? The hospital had 2 stories, and a good amount of foliage blocked the stairs to the main entrance. It actually looked like the building didn't want me there. Surprisingly enough, there wasn't a lot of graffiti. Usually, buildings like these are covered in graffiti. I could only make out one word of what little there was, muerte, which means death in Spanish, but it was cut off at the T. The surroundings were also completely abandoned. I could see houses and a small park nearby, but it looked like nobody had been there in ages. A gust of wind suddenly blew, and it caught my attention because it went through the foliage that covered the main entrance. I swore somebody was asking me to go inside. The steps weren't all that difficult to go up. When I got to the top of the stairs, I went through the main entrance. The place was a mess. Linoleum tiles littered the floor. There was dust everywhere, and I felt like I was breathing large amounts of it with every breath. I didn't see any medical equipment either, or beds. The only thing there were old dried-up toilets. But the one thing that did catch my eye was a small trail of dry blood drops leading from one room to another. I checked the room closest to me and saw a huge blotch of dried blood on the floor. The blood drops seemed to start there, as if that was the first drop of blood. From there the drops continued into the room across it, and stopped just in front of the window. Smaller droplets, as if sprayed the window's frame. I thought of a doctor throwing a body part out the window, or something. I would have lied to myself if I said the whole image in my head wasn't a bit comical, however grotesque. A shuffling noise suddenly came from my right, and I briefly saw a small shadow bolt down the corridor. I ran after it. The corridor turned a left, and then a right where it became into a larger hallway with more doors to its sides and a large exit that allowed light to flood in. Sadly, I didn't see anything. However, I saw small plumes of smoke still dancing in the air, so something was definitely in there. I scanned my surroundings and noticed another trail of blood. This one, however, snaked from the corridor I had just come from, and down the large hallway to the exit at the end of it. It was also a solid line, rather than small drops of blood. Notice that I didn't say it was a trail of dried blood. What really scared me was the whisper that suddenly shot out from behind me. Hermano, it said with pitch similar to a baby's. That means brother in Spanish. I immediately looked behind me, and I saw the same small shadow from earlier go down the corridor I just came from. Again, I ran after it. When I got to the hospital's entrance, I lost the shadow again. But then, I heard the same whispering voice. "Come down here," it said to me in Spanish. I looked to my right where the sound came from, and I saw a staircase leading down to the hospital's first story. I couldn't see the bottom of the stairs too well, seeing how the first floor was not as well lit as the second one, probably from all the foliage growing at the bottom. But, for some weird reason, I went downstairs. I couldn't have just walked away. When I got to the very bottom, I saw the same line of blood coming from a hole in the ceiling, down the wall, and through a corridor behind me. It led to a large room, which was probably a lobby back in the day. The ceiling was all cracked and falling to pieces, and I could see the rotten wooden beams that formed the foundation of the building. But then, the noises started to happen again. I heard a mess of scuttles moving from one side of the room to the other. Dust shifted in the air quickly, which only confirmed that there was something in there with me. Even the wooden beams creaked a bit from time to time. The scuttles were one thing though. I also heard the same whispers again. Even though they clearly sounded Spanish, it wasn't as understandable as it was earlier. I swear the voices were having a conversation between themselves. But then, their attention turned to me. "Why have you come, brother?" The voice asked me in Spanish, of course. "Tell me who you are first." I answered back in Spanish myself. The whispers began to rise again, as if consulting their answer, and then a silence dropped. After waiting for a couple of seconds, they finally answered me. "Our mothers did not want us. Our fathers were eager to get rid of us. To this hospital they came to undo us. Like trash we were thrown out into the scorching sun. But our survival was hardly their choice. We stayed in this world, just as you chose to stay." I was completely confused by their words. I didn't have that much time to think, though. "Stop." Suddenly, a door creaked open next to me. I saw it. A baby crawled from that room. Its legs were malformed and its body was drenched in blood. Bile oozed from its mouth, and I swore it was trying to form a smile. With every drag of the body, it left a trail of blood. A rustling behind me was enough to snap me from my shock. When I turned, there were more of them crawling up to me. And up in the wooden beams, I saw them climb their way down with incredible speed. My mind couldn't handle it. I ran past the first one, up the stairs and out of the hospital. Just as I was getting into the car, I heard their whispers, "Come back to us, brother." In the summer of 2003, two brothers in their 30s, Paul and Richard Morris, traveled to the White Mountains in Arizona. The mountains, engulfed in dense forest, were full of rivers bursting with fish, and Richard was a keen fisherman. The Morris brothers were heading there to get away from it all for the summer. They were wise to pick this location as its remoteness provided peace, away from other people. The two would stay in their uncle's solitary cabin located deep in the central, forested part of the range. Their uncle had sent an email to them about the cabin weeks before. He said he was giving it up for them as he was moving into retirement. After several hours' cycle ride, they finally arrived at the cabin. They brought in their belongings and noticed the cabin had a computer which Paul checked out, perfect for storing photos and for emailing their friends about their trip. There were no files on the PC or a password, so they assumed their uncle had left it free and clear for their own use. Later that evening, they went out fishing to a river about a mile away. Richard knew that the rivers there had all the best salmon and trout, and he hoped that he would make the catch of the day, or even the month, as his uncle used to say. After more than an hour of fishing, the two set off back home with a fresh catch to eat by the fire. Paul had taken some photos of the fish they had caught and went onto the cabin's computer to upload them. However, as they entered, Richard noticed an unusual trail of a brownish-black sooty substance that was leading into the house from the edge of one of the floorboards. Richard followed the trail and saw it led to and stopped abruptly in front of the computer. Paul asked him what he was doing, and Richard pointed out the trail for him. Feeling disturbed, Paul decided to upload his photos to the PC while Richard studied the substance to work out what caused it. He first thought it might have been a small fire or something like that. Richard looked at the floorboard where the trail started, but couldn't lift it up, it was stuck like cement. Meanwhile, Paul noticed an untitled file in the Documents folder. This was peculiar as when he logged on previously it was empty. Opening the file, his jaw dropped and he nearly fell off his chair. Richard was alerted by his brothers shouting and rushed to the scene. Richard tried hard not to cover his eyes when he saw the screen. A disturbing, sepia-like image about the size of an ordinary photo was present in the center of the monitor. The image depicted a witch-like woman with a thin stitched mouth with an expressionless face. It was unclear if it was a photo or drawing, but it left Paul in hysterics. Cabinthing.png. Who had put it on and when? Paul continuously asked his brother. Was it you that did this? He demanded. But Richard strongly denied this. The computer normally could tell them the time and date the picture was saved, but it said nothing. Has that trail got anything to do with this? He begged for answers more. Neither of them would know how the image got onto the computer. It had no files before, and this cabin was miles away from any other human settlements. The cabin included padlocked doors, windows and 24/7 CCTV which were mainly there for deterring dangerous animals. But the brothers could find no evidence from these to solve how this chilling work of art could have gotten onto the computer. However, when reviewing the blurry CCTV tapes they could see at the half-hour mark of camera number 3, the trail randomly appeared from nowhere. This caused Paul to panic more. Desperate for answers, the two went to phone the police, but the phone wouldn't work. What's wrong with it? Gasped Paul. Richard told him it simply would not work. The phone made no sounds when he dialed the cops. They checked its wires which seemed to be in good condition. Feeling too overwhelmed already from the image that had frightened them out of their skin, they decided it was worth leaving this now ghastly cabin. They swore they would talk to their uncle as well as the police once they got back to civilization. They called the cops upon arriving back home, who went to investigate with them along with detectives. The police and detectives could not explain the image or the mysterious trail. The brothers turned to their uncle, who they vowed to speak to about this. Why did you send us to that creepy cabin of yours? Richard snapped to him over the phone, to which their uncle replied, but, I don't have a cabin,